Ambassador, what is the reason that you are here back again in Skopje? A few years ago, you retired from the foreign service at the State Department where you worked for decades. So my question is, why are you now back at this time, at this point of time here in North Macedonia?
Well, it's always a treat for me to come back to Skopje. I always say, sort of, doma sum. I spent a number of years of my life professionally, but obviously personally as well here. So to visit is a treat. I was here several times last year, which was my first year since I left government, since I left the Foreign Service after 31 years. And in my private sector capacity and my work with a think tank in Washington focusing on Europe, including Western Balkans, it's great to come back. I was particularly pleased to be here for the 4th anniversary of the accession to NATO. North Macedonia became the 30th ally, the 30th member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And for me, that was a very proud moment professionally and also personally because we'd worked so hard on this process for a long time.
You are coming to the country 1 week before the official start of the campaign for the presidential and after that the following parliamentary elections. Having in mind your experience and knowledge of the region, especially of the country, among other things, you were ambassador here in Skopje, do you see progress in the democratic atmosphere and the conditions for having elections in North Macedonia?
Well, I think it's good that I came before the elections. I don't want to be here involved in the elections here, and I think it's great in many ways that your system gives you a set period, official period for the elections. In my country, the United States, as you know, our election just is going on and on and on, and we have 7 months until the presidential election in November, and it already seems a bit like an eternity. I think you have the structure and the capacity here to carry out good, democratic, free, fair elections, and that's important. I hope every citizen takes his or her opportunity and responsibility seriously to participate fully. And this time, of course, you have presidential elections as well as parliamentary elections, and that'll be important in writing the next chapter of the country after so many years, broadly positive years when you think about how far North Macedonia has come since the first independence after the breakup of Yugoslavia. It's really quite remarkable, and certainly we're reminded of that by looking at the NATO membership, which I think was a huge step for the country.
When we're on the elections, in your opinion, how let's say, real is the fear from potential foreign influence on the election process? And when we're talking about NATO, how NATO, being part of NATO, is helping to, let's say, somehow countermeasure these potential influences?
Well, the concerns about foreign interference are now universal. I mean, we've had these in the United States, and it's very clear now, going back certainly to the 2016 election, that particularly with social media, the ability to manipulate that and to drive arguments, the ability for false information. Now we have to deal with the concerns about technology, cyber issues, AI, generating fake news stories, false videos. These things are happening, so we have to be ultra aware of them. I think many times it's incumbent upon each individual to simply stand back and say, now, wait a minute, is this real or not? And to remember that there is truth out there. We each know and experience what is real, and not to be pulled into the conspiracy theories. This part of the world, of course, has its fair share and history of conspiracy theories and you know, the Byzantine Balkan world. I think many people are now beyond that, and that's why education is so important and people having a better understanding of the world that they're in.
What do you think that will happen after the elections in terms of EU integration, a process that depends, the continuation depends on the adoption of the constitutional changes? When I asked U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia, James O'Brien, several months ago about this topic, he said, I'm going to quote him, clearly there is an offer on the table. One may say that he will come with a better one, but if he doesn't, tell you exactly what it's all about and why others would accept it, then he's just trying to trick you. And I hope voters are smarter than that.
I think there's no doubt that Europe, as it's known, the European Union, is where this country belongs. And that's been part of the process for a long time. You know, I've always said that the solution to the so-called Macedonia question, something that's been talked about in the history books and in diplomacy and politics of Europe for nearly 2 centuries. You can go back to Bismarck, who talked about the key to stability in the Balkans is resolving the Macedonia question. And you and all of us together that support this country have the answer to the Macedonia question. That is, this country, in its borders, democratic, multi-ethnic, with good relations with its neighbors, and fully integrated into Euro-Atlantic structures, NATO and the EU, and that's been the path. It's been a difficult path. It's been often disappointing and frustrating and seemingly unfair, but yet you've kept at it because I think people realize that this is the best path. You can look at other examples around Europe and countries that have sought to join the European Union, certainly NATO. You've done that. EU is the next thing. I can't imagine the country moving on without pursuing EU membership, and I think it will come. After the NATO membership and after the resolution of the name issue with the Prespa agreement, I was so pleased to push through NATO and thought now the EU will be the next step, and obviously that became frustrating. Changes in views from certain member states and the EU. I spoke out very openly at the time, even when I was still in official positions, saying that it was disappointing and very unfair and not good for the stability of not just the region, but EU and Europe more broadly in our transatlantic relationship. So, as Assistant Secretary O'Brien has said, the US position is very much supporting the Euro-Atlantic integration, including EU membership for North Macedonia. And I think it will come. I think you just have to stay on the line and do that. I try to keep in touch with contacts at the European Union. There's a lot of support for that. And I don't think people should become too discouraged. If there's anything you know, it's that if you stick with a goal, you can get there and do what's broadly most important for the future of the country. So that's what I expect to see in the years ahead.
One of global focuses of President Biden administration is tackling corruption. Where do you see North Macedonia in this process, and to what extent, in your opinion, is the so-called US Blacklist being effective so far?
Well, look, there's corruption here, and everybody knows that. I mean, it's certainly not a secret. It's been talked about. When I was ambassador here, I talked about it. It's unacceptable, and most importantly, it's unacceptable to the people of the country. They're frustrated by it, and yet I'm not sure everybody has stood up and sort of said, we're just not going to put up with this anymore. It's got to be a collective decision, and you need to look back at the experiences that you've had and demand, on behalf of the people, as part of a democracy, that there be a change. And everybody needs to take steps to root out corruption. It's always a challenge. It's part of the human condition anywhere in the world. But I think you can do that. Our process in the United States is when we look at situations all over the world under our laws and our policies is to in fact, employ sanctions. That's really what the so-called blacklist is, where we have been able to document and show that this has affected our policies, that these are things unacceptable to the United States. And we do that. It's a very public process. It's not done in grave secrecy. That's what it's for, is to try to say, we find this a problem, we're calling this out. This individual is not eligible to come to the United States because of that. And so that's our way of highlighting that, what we think is a causes damage to our interests and our policies. I think people here sometimes use that as a signal that they can highlight and point to, but most important is what you do here and what you decide and what you call out. And to call upon, for instance, judicial officials, law enforcement to impose and uphold the law. Rule of law is the backbone and the key to not only sustaining strong democracy, but to promoting strong economy, prosperity, opportunity. And that's crucial. There are always going to be frustrations and challenges. But I think, if anything, this country, all its people over generations have learned that they have to keep moving forward. And they should look at experiences from the past and try to figure out, what did we learn from that? How can we move forward and not make the same mistakes over and over again, and actually accomplish things to meet the needs of the people, the desires of the people for not only stability and security, but greater prosperity and opportunity.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Great to be with you.